Okay. Now let's imagine what it was like before the revolution, before the American Revolution. Okay. These people who control America are over here in America, and they're having to send some of their money overseas to someone else. Probably most of it, most of their money, most of their goods, they're all of it's going to someone that's not them, right? Now, what happens when you get a bunch of people? Now, you got to remember, these people are at least a couple of weeks away from each other, so news doesn't spread to the Europe for another couple of weeks. So the Europe won't find out. Like if they decide to revolt, Europe's not going to find out for a couple of weeks because of how long it takes to get information back and forth. So when you have a problem, when you have a situation like that, what always happens? Now, if you look through your history, anytime there's no oversight, what happens with no oversight? And that is corruption. Naturally, the American leaders grow corrupt and they go, okay, we want more. So they decide, American Revolution. Here's the thing. No one cares. See, the regular people don't care. See, if they go pay their taxes to the rich Americans or to people overseas, doesn't matter to them. They're still paying their taxes. So they don't care. So the only people who will fight for an American Revolution is the people they fool into patriotism or the people they hire to go fight. So that's not enough people. So what they start to do is do some really shady recruitment methods. Uh, Now, this is all historical fact. You can all look it up, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you don't believe anything I say, look it up. That's my advice. I do not remember names or dates or anything like that because I encourage you to look it up. I am not going to do your research for you because I've seen it myself. Like I've quoted some biblical passages before, and every time I do, they're like, "Oh, it's not true because you don't have the passage name." No, you say you read the Bible. Look it up. And they never do because they don't want to know. So anyway, the point is, so they start to do some shady recruitment tactics. They get people drunk, have them sign their name, uh, make people think, get people who can't read to sign their name, thinking it's something else. They do all kinds of little shady things. Now, naturally, this causes people to leave the Revolutionary Army. Desertion is rampant. Now, desertion has always been punishable by death, but in this case, they went a little too far. Now, there's something called the Pennsylvania Line Massacre. Basically, a certain general, I think his name was George Washington, he decided, okay, there's too many deserters. So he took the entire Pennsylvania line that deserted all at once, and he had them punished in the most cruel ways. He had their friends and family execute them. That was apparently enough to stop a lot of desertion problems. And that is how we got the American Revolution to happen. But now, after the Revolution, what happens? Well, at first, naturally, because they have to spend their own money to shore up things that they lost from the war. But eventually, after a few years, they start to get richer and richer and richer until we get what we have now. Now, if you look at all of the, I'll give you look at everything in American history, and you will see that this is prevalent throughout everything. Greed everywhere, but in the little nooks and cracks. Um, I'll give you another example: slavery. Now, you think now the uh, the American patriots were pretty smart. They actually came up with that freedom of speech thing was done specifically so that people overseas and their enemies could see that not everyone supports being cruel, and that would make them a little more careful about where they attack, who they attack, and where they direct their hatred, which is why they did it. That's why there is a Second Amendment, I think is what it is. See, like again, I don't remember the details, I just know it's there. Yeah. Anyway, the point is, uh, they were smart people. Do you honestly think they didn't see the hypocrisy in saying land of the free while having slaves? Nope, they knew it. See, here's the thing they just got a new nation. They needed a bunch of free labor in order to make a bunch of money as fast as possible to make that nation more powerful. Now, whether or not that's a good or a bad thing, that depends on what you like, what you have now. Because this nation still exists because of what they did. Granted, it was a huge sacrifice and a stupid mistake, but the fact is, uh, that's the way it was. Now, whenever they got rid of the slavery thing, whenever they got rid of slavery, they still needed to incorporate it. They still needed free labor. So what did they do? The prison industrial complex. That's right. That's what they did. And we still have that today. It's not as bad, but it's still here. Basically, they found ways to imprison people that for dumb things. They did it with a lot of black people. Yep, that's right. And now another thing they did. Now the reason they did that is again for more workforce, but they didn't just do it for that. See, you also have to remember that they also didn't want to appear like they made the bad thing with slavery, so they allowed rampant racism. Right? That way, they could enslave people in the prisons and not have too much, you know, complaints about people saying, "Oh, that's not right. That's not fair. That's not American. It isn't American." So, uh, again, they did the same thing. Now, because they did such a good job back then, back before people started to realize what they were doing, racism is still around today. Now, the reason it's still around today is a little complicated. I'll get into that next. But the point is, greed. Now, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it all just depends on your point of view. It might be a good thing. It might be a bad thing, depending on how this nation goes about the future. For example, Trump is not necessarily a bad president. He does have some good policies. That policy about wanting to put the tax information on one little card you filled out, that's it. Makes perfect sense. Very good idea. Uh, it's probably not going to happen because like places like H&R Block, things like that are going to definitely rally against it. It's not as much money to be spread, just like the gun thing. Uh, it doesn't promote the economy. It's going to reduce the GDP, and so they don't want it to happen. Again, they're focusing more on their greed than their sense of right, the American sense. They're focusing more on rich America, not America, what America actually is. Um, so again, they're basing it more on what it was founded instead of the ideal. And the ideal is what we should be aiming for, not the reality. Uh, anyway, next video will be about uh, racism.